What short story completely mindfucked you? After dying, God informs you that hell is a myth and that everyone sins. It's okay. Instead, the dead are sorted into 6 houses of heaven based on the sins they chose. We arrived first at the house of lust. House is a misleading term. It was more of a camp spread over acres and acres of lush forest. There was a white sandy beach, nude, of course, full of copulating couples. There were little cabins sprinkled all along the path, from which orgasmic moans regularly came belting out. Men with 6-pack abs and women with perky breasts strolled by without even noticing me and God. They only had eyes for each other, tickling and pinching each other with flirtatious giggles. "What do you think?" God asked as we passed a 19-way taking place in a pool of champagne. Little cherubs flitted overhead armed with mops and cleaning supplies, thankfully. Lust is our most popular sin. I eyed the supermodel-like figures of a couple passing nearby and could easily see why. You can look however you want. Hell, you can be whatever gender you want. No fetish is too taboo, and no desire can be denied here. It was quite tempting, but I wasn't ready to make a permanent decision here. "Let's see the others," I told God. We carried on to greed. We passed rows and rows of mansions, each more opulent than the next. Some of them were so large that they would have had enough bedrooms to fit my entire hometown. And so many different styles. 1 second, we were in a beautiful French vineyard in front of a gorgeous chateau with the Alps in the background. The next second, a warm tropical beach with a modern mansion atop breathtaking cliffs. After that, a ski chalet in Colorado with a roaring fire in a hearth large enough to fit an ox. Each one had various Italian sports cars and Rolls Royces parked in front, with the occasional smattering of boats, helicopters, etc. Any material desire you ever wanted, God explained. Your own world, where you can have everything. You want the Hope Diamond? You can fly to Washington DC in your own solid gold helicopter and buy it from the Smithsonian. Hell, you can just buy the Smithsonian. Also tempting, but I decided to keep looking. Gluttony was next up. Tables and tables of the very finest foods, beautiful steaks cooked medium rare, butter poached lobster tail, fresh oysters on a half shell, exotic wines in dusty bottles that had been hiding in the cellars of the world's finest restaurants. Everyone had a glass of champagne in hand and simply lounged on couches and chairs near the tables, eating endlessly. As soon as the inhabitants took a bite, the food just instantly came back. My mouth watered even watching them. In every other house, the food is practically sawdust compared to gluttony, God explained. You haven't truly experienced heaven until you've been to gluttony. I shook my head, and we kept moving. Sloth was as you'd expect. An endless sea of the softest mattresses, stacked with cushions and pillows that made the story of the princess and the pea seem minimalist. Little angels visited each resident, giving them massages that made them all melt into their blankets. Wrath was, well, a lot like what I'd expect hell to be like. Fire, brimstone, whips, torture, you know, the works. Except here, you weren't the one being tortured. Every enemy you'd ever made in your real life was now under your thumb. Lots of people choose their fathers, God explained. Lots of grudges against parents in general, you know. But you're not limited to that. Someone beat you out for a big promotion back on Earth? Take your pound of flesh here. Then we arrived at NV. It looked, well, a lot like home. Go on in, God said, gesturing toward the door. I turned the knob and walked in, and found Emily waiting inside. She ran forward, wrapped her arms around my neck, and planted a kiss right on my lips. Welcome home, honey. I looked back toward God. Oh, don't be coy, he said. You have no secrets from me. We all know that you were in love with your best friend's wife. She didn't seem to hear him at all. She went back into the hall. We all know that you just settled for your own wife while secretly pining after her. Well, this is your chance to live happily ever after. I peered into the kitchen. Emily was baking something, wearing nothing but an apron. Her curly black hair fell softly over her shoulder as she whisked ingredients. She turned back, noticed I was observing her, and an enthusiastic smile spread across her face. "It's what you've always wanted, isn't it?" God whispered in my ear. I wanted to take it. Goddamn did I want to take it. But I shook my head. God seemed puzzled. "You need to make a decision," he told me. "I haven't seen pride yet." He scoffed. "No one ever wants pride, trust me." "Well, I want to see it." Pride was boring. Just a row of workbenches in a bare white room. "I don't get it," I told God. "Yeah, no one does," he answered. "That's why no one ever chooses it." Doesn't cavorting in lust sound better than sitting here building little trinkets for the rest of eternity? Wouldn't you rather gorge yourself in gluttony? Or spend time with Emily in envy? I considered the options again. "I pick pride," I finally told him. He narrowed his eyes. "What? Look at it." He gestured around the room again. There wasn't much to look at. "Why would you choose this for the rest of time?" "Because you don't want me to pick it," I told him. If he was really God, he'd know what a contrarian I can be. And I knew he was hiding something, trying to pretend like pride didn't exist. There was something special about it. God scowled back. "Fine." He led me over to one of the workbenches. In the center, there was a black space. A blank, empty void that went on forever. "Here's your universe," he said. "You've got 7 days to get started." He took his seat at the bench next to me and went back to tinkering in his own world. After a long pause, he finally spoke again. "You know, it might be nice for me to actually have some company for once." The Mesopotamian folktale. Appointment in Samarra seems to be a mindfuck for many students that I've read it to. Here it is in a retelling by Roger Hearn. Once, many years ago, when the world was a very different place, a rich merchant lived in the city of Baghdad. One day, the merchant decided to hold a feast for his friends, so he sent for his most trusted servant. He said, "I want you to go to the marketplace and search for food and drink that will astound and delight my guests when they come to dine with me tonight. Buy only the finest produce. My friends will expect nothing less than the best." "Don't you worry, master," said Amd. "You can rely on me not to let you down." Amd bowed and hurried off, but he wasn't looking forward to his task. The day was hot, and he knew the marketplace would be filled with bustling crowds. He was right. People were pushing and shoving each other to get at the best bargains. Amd sighed and plunged into the seething mass of humanity. Suddenly, he felt a hand tug at his sleeve. Amd frowned and turned to see who it was. To his horror, a face he had hoped never to see stared at him. Amd gasped in fear and took to his heels. He raced back to his master's house and burst into the room where the merchant was counting his money. The merchant looked up in surprise. "You're back soon," he said. "I expected you to be ours yet. I hope you haven't just bought the first things you saw." "I haven't bought anything," replied Amd. The merchant frowned. "Why ever not?" he asked angrily. "You had better have a good reason for disobeying me." "I do," said Amd in a very shaky voice. "Well, tell me what it is," said the merchant. "And be quick about it." "I went to the marketplace as you ordered," said Amd. "But when I was there someone grabbed hold of my sleeve and pulled on it." "Well, that was a bit rude of them I suppose," said the merchant. "But surely it was no reason for you to come running home." "Oh yes it was," replied Amd, "because the creature that grabbed me was death herself." "No," gasped the merchant. "Yes," said Amd. "And death glared at me in a most horrible way. I was terrified." "Of course you were," said the merchant, "you poor man." "I didn't know what to do, so I ran away." "Quite right too," agreed his master. "Look," said Amd, "I can't stay here now. Please lend me a horse, and I'll ride to Samarra and hide at my friend's house. It's the perfect solution. Death will never find me there." That's a good idea, said the merchant. Take the horse and go immediately. You'll be safe in Samarra, it's miles from Baghdad. Amd saddled up the merchant's swiftest horse and galloped off to Samarra without further delay. After he was gone, the merchant decided to go to the marketplace. He was angry with death. Amd was my best and most trusted servant, he said to himself. Death had no right to scare him. The merchant strode into the market and sure enough he soon spotted Death standing by herself in a shadowy corner. He marched up to the creature and said in a very firm voice, "Hey, I want a word with you." Death turned to the merchant and said in a voice as cold as a north wind in winter, "What do you want with me, mortal?" "Well," said the merchant, "I want to know why you frightened my servant this morning." "You had no right to glare at him." "I didn't glare at him," replied Death. "The look I gave him was one of surprise." The merchant was puzzled. "Why were you surprised to see my servant Amd?" "Because," replied Death, "I didn't expect to see him here in Baghdad. You see, I have an appointment with him tonight at his friend's house in Samarra." An elderly man was sitting alone on a dark path. He wasn't sure of which direction to go, and he'd forgotten both where he was traveling to and who he was. He remembered absolutely nothing. He suddenly looked up to see an elderly woman before him. She grinned toothlessly and with a cackle spoke, "Now your third wish." "What will it be?" "Third wish?" The man was baffled. "How can it be a third wish if I haven't had a first and second wish?" "You've had 2 wishes already," the hag said, "but your second wish was for you to forget everything you know." She cackled at the poor man. "So it is that you have 1 wish left." "Alright," he said hesitantly, "I don't believe this, but there's no harm in trying. I wish to know who I truly am." "Funny," said the old woman as she granted his wish and disappeared forever. "That was your first wish. You were on your way home when you died. It was a car accident. Nothing particularly remarkable, but fatal nonetheless. You left behind a wife and 2 children. It was a painless death. The EMTs tried their best to save you, but to no avail. Your body was so utterly shattered you were better off, trust me. And that's when you met me." What happened?" you asked. "Where am I?" "You died," I said, matter of factly. No point in mincing words. "There was a red truck, and it was skidding." "Yup," I said. "I died?" "Yup. But don't feel bad about it. Everyone dies," I said. You looked around. There was nothingness. Just you and me. "What is this place?" you asked. "Is this the afterlife?" "More or less," I said. "Are you God?" you asked. "Yup," I replied. "I'm God. My kid's my wife," you said. "What about them? Will they be alright?" "That's what I like to see," I said. "You just died, and your main concern is for your family. That's good stuff right there." You looked at me with fascination. To you, I didn't look like God. I just looked like some man. Or possibly a woman. Some vague authority figure, maybe. More of a grammar school teacher than the almighty. "Don't worry," I said. "They'll be fine. Your kids will remember you as perfect in every way. They didn't have time to grow contempt for you. Your wife will cry on the outside, but will be secretly relieved. To be fair, your marriage was falling apart. If it's any consolation, she'll feel very guilty for feeling relieved." "Oh," you said. "So what happens now? Do I go to heaven or hell or something?" "Neither," I said. "You'll be reincarnated." "Ah," you said. "So the Hindus were right, all religions are right in their own way," I said. "Walk with me." You followed along as we strode through the void. "Where are we going?" "Nowhere in particular," I said. "It's just nice to walk while we talk." "So what's the point, then?" you asked. "When I get reborn, I'll just be a blank slate, right? A baby. So all my experiences and everything I did in this life won't matter." "Not so," I said. You have within you all the knowledge and experiences of all your past lives. You just don't remember them right now. I stopped walking and took you by the shoulders. Your soul is more magnificent, beautiful, and gigantic than you can possibly imagine. A human mind can only contain a tiny fraction of what you are. It's like sticking your finger in a glass of water to see if it's hot or cold. You put a tiny part of yourself into the vessel, and when you bring it back out, you've gained all the experiences it had. You've been in a human for the last 48 years, so you haven't stretched out yet and felt the rest of your immense consciousness. If we hung out here for long enough, you'd start remembering everything. But there's no point to doing that between each life. How many times have I been reincarnated, then? Oh, lots. Lots and lots. And into lots of different lives. I said. This time around, you'll be a Chinese peasant girl in 540 AD. Wait, what? You stammered. You're sending me back in time. Well, I guess technically, time, as you know it, only exists in your universe. Things are different where I come from. Where you come from? You said. Oh sure, I explained I come from somewhere. Somewhere else. And there are others like me. I know you'll want to know what it's like there, but honestly you wouldn't understand. Oh, you said, a little let down. But wait. If I get reincarnated to other places in time, I could have interacted with myself at some point. Sure. Happens all the time. And with both lives only aware of their own lifespan, you don't even know it's happening. So what's the point of it all? Seriously? I asked. Seriously? You're asking me for the meaning of life. Isn't that a little stereotypical? Well, it's a reasonable question, you persisted. I looked you in the eye. The meaning of life, the reason I made this whole universe, is for you to mature. You mean mankind? You want us to mature? No, just you. I made this whole universe for you. With each new life you grow and mature and become a larger and greater intellect. Just me? What about everyone else? There is no one else, I said. In this universe, there's just you and me. You stared blankly at me. But all the people on Earth, all you. Different incarnations of you. Wait. I'm everyone. Now you're getting it, I said, with a congratulatory slap on the back. I'm every human being who ever lived. Or who will ever live, yes. I'm Abraham Lincoln. And you're John Wilkes Booth, too, I added. I'm Hitler? You said, appalled. And you're the millions he killed. I'm Jesus. And you're everyone who followed him. You fell silent. Every time you victimized someone, I said, you were victimizing yourself. Every act of kindness you've done to yourself. Every happy and sad moment ever experienced by any human was, or will be, experienced by you. You thought for a long time. Why? You ask me. Why do all this? Because someday, you will become like me. Because that's what you are. You're one of my kind. You're my child. Whoa, you said, incredulous. You mean I'm a god? No. Not yet. You're a fetus. You're still growing. Once you've lived every human life throughout all time, you will have grown enough to be born. So the whole universe, you said, it's just an egg. I answered. Now it's time for you to move on to your next life. And I sent you on your way.